My husband is dead. I killed him. He had planned to fake his death, run away with his mistress, and leave me to deal with the mess. But on the day before the funeral, I discovered his plan. So I grabbed a dagger and stabbed him to death. I even kindly helped close the coffin lid and knocked on it twice. Don't thank me. It was my duty. Welcome to my channel. If you like this story, please click to subscribe. There are more wonderful stories waiting for you to listen to. Chapter 1. When I married into the Marquis of Wunning's mansion, the dowry chest spent 99 poles. When Xiao Shuqia lifted the veil, the candlelight flickered gently in his eyes. Yin Yang, I will never betray you in this life. He kept his word. In the past 3 years, he has always treated me with great care. Though I have yet to bear him a son or daughter, he has never blamed me for it. Instead, he has gone out of his way to find tonics for me. But heaven does not favor us. We have not been blessed with children. And now my husband is gone. A few days ago, Xiao Shuqia suddenly fell ill, coughing up blood, and collapsed. Once he fell, he never got up again. On his deathbed, Xiao Shuqia's greatest concern was for me. Yin Yang. His voice was broken. Every word was tinged with blood. It is my fault. I cannot grow old with you. I hurriedly used a silk handkerchief to plug his mouth. But the blood would not stop flowing. The handkerchief was stained red, and so were my sleeves. I have already discussed it with my mother. His voice was intermittent, as if being forced out from the depths of his throat. Adopt a boy from the Pang family for you. Cough cough. You will have someone to rely on. Another violent coughing fit followed. My heart felt as though it had been torn out by force. The pain was almost unbearable. I held back my tears, my voice trembling uncontrollably. Husband, there must still be hope. Don't give up. But he only shook his head. He gripped my hand so tightly it felt like he was trying to crush my wrist. Promise me. His pupils were already dilating. Yet he stubbornly kept his gaze fixed on me. Otherwise, I will die with regret. I finally broke down. Tears streamed down my face. My voice was so choked up I could barely form a complete sentence. Husband, I'll do it. I'll do everything you ask. Only then did he seem to let go of a 1,000-pound weight. His tense body slowly relaxed. His fingers gradually loosened their grip. Finally, they fell limply to the edge of the bed. I stared at him in shock, then suddenly felt a sweetness in my throat. A mouthful of blood sprayed onto his face. Lady! In the maid Inlian's startled cry, I fell into darkness. When I opened my eyes again, the sky outside the window had already grown dark. Inlian saw me awake and hurriedly brought a bowl of warm ginseng soup. Her eyes red from crying. Lady, you've finally woken up. You've been unconscious for a day and night. And you've scared me to death. I struggled to sit up and took the ginseng soup, but couldn't swallow a single drop. It felt like something was blocking my throat. Even breathing was difficult. Inlian, seeing my dazed state, whispered softly, Madam, the late lord's funeral arrangements have been handled by the old lady. Everything is in order, and we're waiting for the funeral tomorrow. The old lady specifically instructed the servants not to disturb you, so you could rest properly. Hearing this, my heart sank. A wave of intense guilt washed over me. My mother-in-law is elderly and in poor health, needing assistance even to walk. Now she must endure the pain of losing her son alone. She also has to handle all these tedious funeral arrangements. My husband must be blaming me in the afterlife. No! I must go see him again. I suddenly threw off the blankets and struggled to get out of bed. My legs felt weak, as if I were standing on cotton. I nearly fell to the ground. Yin Lian hurriedly supported me, her voice trembling with tears. The doctor said you're suffering from a sudden surge of grief. You must rest and recover. I pushed her hands away and forced myself to stand steady. My voice was unusually firm. You don't need to follow me. Let me be alone. Seeing my determination, Yin Lian could only fetch a plain white robe and gently drape it over my shoulders. Madam, the night air is chilly. Please take care of yourself. I nodded and slowly walked out the door. The night wind blew against my face, rustling the white funeral banners hanging in the corridor. The silence was eerie. Not even the old woman who usually kept watch at night was in sight. As I approached the funeral hall, my heart clenched in fear. I was both angry and furious. There wasn't even a single person keeping vigil at the funeral hall. I had only been unconscious for a day. How could the servants in the mansion have become so negligent? The coffin was placed in the center of the room. I took a few steps forward, my legs feeling weak. When my fingertips touched the cold coffin, I finally realized. My husband was truly dead. Husband. I knelt before the coffin, my forehead pressed against the cold wood, the icy touch sending shivers down my spine. I don't know how long I knelt there. My knees had gone numb, and my tears had dried up. Just then, a sudden burst of laughter broke the silence of the funeral hall. I furrowed my brows. Who could it be? How dare they laugh and joke near the funeral hall? I was about to scold them, but then I heard a familiar voice at the door. You little slut. You're really bold. Daring to come to the funeral hall. My body stiffened, and my back was instantly soaked in cold sweat. That voice. It was clearly Xiao Shujie's. But he was already dead. I had seen him take his last breath with my own eyes. The footsteps grew closer, mingled with the seductive laughter of a woman. Without a moment to spare, I darted behind the mourning curtain. Through the crack, I saw Xiao Shujie embracing a woman in a green robe as they entered the funeral hall. His face was as rosy as ever, and around his waist was the lotus-shaped perfume pouch I had given him. He had once said he would wear it every day until they were old and gray. The woman's fingers traced the coffin, teasingly saying, "This coffin is quite valuable." Xiao Shujie chuckled softly, reaching out to wrap his arms around her waist. He buried his head in her chest. My mother made it specially. It's breathable. Why don't we go inside and try it out? Stop it! The woman giggled, dodging his kisses. Her fingertips traced circles on his chest. Xiao Lang, you really don't care about Sheniying? I heard she even coughed up blood for you. Xiao Shujie's smile vanished instantly. A cold gleam flashed in his eyes. She's just the daughter of a merchant. Marrying me was already a great honor for her. Yet she dared to demand that I promise never to take a concubine for the rest of my life? On the day he proposed to her, I did say that if he ever betrayed me, we would divorce. But I never imagined that this could become the reason for his fake death. Their subsequent conversation was like poison. Every word pierced my heart. Once she hands over all the money she's hidden, to fill the gaps in the Marquis's finances, you can do with her as you please. What if I want her dead? It's up to you. Anyway, I've already poisoned her medicine, she won't live much longer. Xiao Lang, you're so cruel. I can be even crueler. Jiao Jiao. I hear pregnant women are special, you'd better treat me well today. Ugh. Ah. The woman's words were swallowed up in the intertwined lips. Gently. Be careful of the child. She tilted her head back to endure the impact. The golden hairpin in her hair struck the coffin, emitting a faint, clear sound. I stared at the trembling coffin lid, my entire body shivering with cold. My fingers dug deeply into the palms of my hands, almost drawing blood. So that's it. So that's what was going on. I was like a fool, being toyed with by him. He faked his death. It was all to get rid of me and run off with his mistress. He even planned to pass the bastard off as my child and make me support his entire family. And I was so foolish as to bleed and faint for him. How utterly ridiculous. I wanted to rush out and kill that pair of dogs. But my weak body told me otherwise. 2 against 1. I had no chance of winning. Acting rashly would only alert them. About half an incense stick later, the 2 finally left. Satisfied. The funeral hall fell silent once more. I looked at the white flags filling the room and couldn't help but laugh. As I laughed, tears fell from my eyes. My fingertips traced the intricate carvings on the coffin. Xiao Shujie, if you want to die so badly, then go ahead and die. All of you. Go to hell. I lay back down on the bed. My entire body was shivering with cold, yet a thin layer of sweat beaded on my forehead. Yin Lian gently tucked the blanket around me. I whispered to her, "If anyone asks, tell them I was unconscious all night and never woke up." She nodded in agreement, though her eyes betrayed her confusion. I paused for a moment before adding, "Also, please do something for me." Perhaps I was too exhausted. After Yin Lian left, I fell into a deep, restless sleep, until the sky began to lighten. Yin Lian woke me up. Xiao Shujie's funeral was about to begin. The funeral hall was solemn. Xiao Shujie lay in the coffin, his face serene, his hands folded across his chest. His mother-in-law stood beside him, her eyes red, explaining. Shujie specifically instructed that there be no elaborate funeral arrangements. I sneered inwardly. The home mansion was so poor, how could they spare the expense for a fake death? But perhaps it was for the best. It would save a lot of trouble. Seeing that I didn't respond, the old woman began to urge me. "Ying, it's almost time, we should." But I suddenly shook off her hand and rushed toward the coffin. I reached out to shake Xiao Shujie's shoulders. My voice shrill. "Husband, you're not dead. Are you?" Everyone around us froze. A flash of panic crossed my mother-in-law's eyes. But she quickly regained her composure. "Ying, you're losing your mind." I shook my head violently, tears streaming down my face like broken beads. "I don't believe it. I don't believe it. How could a good person just disappear like this?" I trembled as I reached out to touch Xiao Shujie's nose. There was no breath. His body was cold and stiff. He looked like he was truly dead. My mother-in-law tried several times to pull me up, but I pushed her away each time. I collapsed onto the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. No one could comfort me. As time ticked by, my mother-in-law grew desperate. She gripped my arm tightly and whispered harshly, "Ying, I know you're heartbroken, but this isn't the time to act like this." I wiped away my tears. My voice choked with emotion. "Mother, can I speak to my husband alone? Just for a moment." My mother-in-law hesitated, her gaze briefly meeting that of the servant Fu Wang by the coffin. After a moment, she sighed and nodded reluctantly. "All right. But hurry. We can't delay any longer. I'll wait for you at the door." She turned and left. But Fu Wang remained by the coffin. He was watching me. The effects of the fake death potion were limited, and I had just wasted half the time. Xiao Shujie's body was slowly regaining consciousness. His fingertips even twitched slightly. I gazed at him lovingly, stroking his face gently. "Husband, you know I've always listened to you. So, if you want to die, I'll send you to your death." Before I could finish speaking, the dagger had already slipped out of my sleeve. I gripped the hilt tightly and plunged it deeply into his chest without hesitation. Xiao Shujie suddenly opened his eyes wide. His pupils filled with disbelief. His lips trembled, as if he wanted to say something, but Fu Wang had already stuffed the binding cloth into his mouth, silencing all his sounds. Under his terrified gaze, I slowly closed the coffin lid. Then I tapped it lightly twice, as if in response to his gratitude. There's no need to thank me. It's my duty. Fu Wang concealed his panic, cleared his throat, and shouted loudly. The time has come. Let's bury him. The coffin was slowly lifted. But just then, a scratching sound suddenly came from inside the coffin. Mother! Listen! I clutched my mother-in-law's trembling hand tightly. Is my husband still alive? My mother-in-law's face turned deathly pale. The scratching sounds from inside the coffin grew more urgent, and the sharp scraping of nails against wood could be heard. The servants around them exchanged glances. The strong men carrying the coffin stopped in their tracks, looking at the old woman in confusion. The old woman forced herself to remain calm. Ying, there's no sound. You must have heard wrong. But my gaze remained fixed on the coffin. You heard wrong. The old woman cut me off abruptly and gave Fu Wang a meaningful glance. The sound of a funeral horn echoed. It drowned out all other sounds. No one noticed. I pressed down on the coffin lid with all my strength. The lid trembled slightly before remaining still. The funeral procession was quick and hasty. Looking at the thin layer of soil covering the coffin, not even the color could be concealed. I sneered inwardly. If Xiao Shuqie were still alive, he might even crawl out of the grave himself. What a pity. He no longer had that chance. Thinking of this, I covered my face and bowed my head, my shoulders trembling uncontrollably. Others assumed I was so overcome with grief that I couldn't stop crying. But they didn't know I was struggling to suppress the laughter in my throat. Xiao Shuqie. He's truly dead now. Ying, you haven't had a single drop of water today. Drink some ginseng soup to warm your body. My mother-in-law's voice was laced with false kindness. She had someone bring over a bowl of steaming ginseng soup. Was she in such a hurry? Could she not even wait until we returned home? Mother! I can't drink it. I choked out, pushing the bowl away. Shuqie is gone. If you fall ill now, what will we do? She suddenly raised her voice and forced the ginseng soup into my hands. I shook my head again. The old woman's face darkened completely, and her voice grew harsh. What? Now you won't even listen to your mother-in-law? The relatives turned their heads at the sound, and several uncles frowned. The Xiao family placed great emphasis on filial piety. If I disobeyed now, I would immediately be accused of being disobedient and unfilial. Mother! I'll drink it. I obediently held the bowl. My mother-in-law stared intently at my throat. As the rim of the bowl touched my lips, I suddenly grabbed her jaw and forced the ginseng soup straight into her mouth. Cough, cough. My mother-in-law was caught off guard and choked, her face turning bright red. But she still swallowed a lot of it. She instinctively tried to scrape her throat. I clamped her hand tightly and shook her shoulders violently. My voice filled with urgency. Mother! What's wrong? Is your heart palpitating again? The relatives thought I was just helping her anxiously. They had no idea I was counting the number of times she swallowed. Once. 3 times. 5 times. Until her throat stopped moving. Only then did I let go. You. The old woman managed to utter a breath. But I had already knelt down with a thud. Mother! I was wrong. You can hit or scold me as you please. But you're so hungry you're trembling. How can you not drink some ginseng soup? Her fingertips, painted with nail polish, trembled violently. I took the opportunity to lean close to her ear. In a voice only the two of us could hear, I whispered, Mother! Such a strong reaction, could the ginseng soup be poisoned? My son's body isn't even cold yet. And you're trying to poison your daughter-in-law? That wouldn't sound good if it got out. Bitch. Her pupils contracted sharply, and her eyes rolled back. She fainted on the spot. I immediately shouted, Mother! I told you to eat something. You're fainting from hunger. Sigh. If I had known I could make her faint, I wouldn't have gone to the trouble of forcing her to drink the medicine in public. The funeral ended in chaos. After sending off the last group of mourners, I removed my mourning hat, letting my black hair fall over my shoulders. Fu Wang knelt on the steps, his forehead pressed against the ground, his voice barely audible. "Madam, the old lady has already gone to bed. What about tonight? Proceed as planned." But he suddenly looked up. My cold smile was reflected in his pupils. "What? Now you want to play the loyal servant? Your wife is waiting for you to take her home. You know, pregnant women tend to overthink things." He trembled violently and bowed his head heavily. "I understand." The pitch-black night. The coffin, which had been buried earlier that day, was slowly opened. Xiao Shujie's body was exposed to the moonlight. The face that once captivated me was now hideous and terrifying. His eyes were bulging out of their sockets, and the bloodstains left by his clawing fingers were clearly visible. "Husband, you must have been in great pain in your final moments." I gently stroked his stiff fingers. I tried to straighten them, but they remained rigid. "Are you ready?" I turned to ask Fu Wang. He nodded nervously, unable to meet my gaze. "Then let's send your master on his final journey." Fu Wang closed his eyes and beckoned with his hand. A large iron cage was carried out. Inside were wild dogs captured from the graveyard. They knew best how to tear a corpse apart until there was nothing left. When Xiao Shujie's body was thrown into the cage, the wild dogs swarmed over it. The sounds of tearing and chewing mixed with the stench of blood filled the night air. Half a moment later, only a few white bones remained in the cage. 2 eyeballs rolled out of the cage. They rolled to my feet, staring at me intently. I bent down to pick up the cloudy eyeballs and chuckled lightly. "Even dogs won't eat this. It's more suitable for humans. Put it back in the coffin." Fu Wang collapsed on the ground, trembling like a sieve. I walked over to him and spoke gently. "As long as you do your job properly, I'll reunite your family after everything is settled." He suddenly looked up, a glimmer of hope flashing in his eyes. "Your wife has been craving sour foods lately. I think it's going to be a big, healthy boy." I casually fiddled with the jade bracelet in my hand. "You're truly blessed." He bowed his head heavily, blood seeping from his forehead. "I'll obey the lady from now on. Please spare them." The world only knows of the Marquis mansion's prestige, but they don't know that all this glamour is supported by my family's vast wealth. I have been married into the Marquis family for 3 years. Although I am deeply in love with Xiao Shujie, I have never let him know about my family's entire fortune. This was my father's dying wish. Never let others know your trump card. My mother-in-law has always been unwilling to relinquish her power, but I have money to pave the way. I already know everything about the servants in the mansion. These seemingly useless pieces of gossip can often save lives in critical moments. When I found out that Xiao Shujie had faked his death, I had Yinlian kidnap the pregnant wife of Fu Wang. I also promised him 100 taels of gold, under threats and bribes. This loyal servant who had served in the mansion for 20 years had no choice but to betray us. When my mother-in-law woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. She rushed out the door with her hair disheveled, not even bothering to put on her shoes. "Quick! Prepare the carriage." She grabbed Fu Wang's collar, her nails digging into his flesh. "Now! Immediately!" Her carriage sped ahead. I followed slowly behind. Yin Lian kept tossing copper coins along the way. The villagers swarmed around, bending down to pick up the coins on the ground, unknowingly following us for half a block. Yin Lian couldn't help but whisper, "Madam, are we really taking so many people with us?" I peeked through the curtain of the carriage and glanced at the crowd behind us. The more people, the better as witnesses. Isn't that right? We arrived at the graveyard. The old woman nearly fell off the carriage. She stumbled forward and threw herself onto the grave, her withered fingers digging into the soil. Dig! Dig it out for me! Fu Wang led several servants in digging with shovels. The coffin was soon exposed to the sunlight. The old woman rushed to the coffin, trembling as she pushed open the lid. Inside, it was empty. Only a pair of neatly arranged eyeballs remained, staring back at her. Ah! I approached at the right moment, pretending to be terrified. I covered my mouth. Husband! How? How did you end up with only your eyes? The old woman spun around, pointing at me and screaming. It's you! You wicked woman! You killed my son! I'll make you pay with your life. She lunged at me, clawing wildly. I dodged to the side. She fell heavily to the ground, her forehead bleeding. Mother! I knelt down to help her up, my voice trembling with tears. How could you say such a thing? My husband died of illness. The funeral was yesterday, and so many people saw it. The onlookers murmured among themselves. That's right. I saw the coffin of the Marquis of Wanning yesterday. I heard that the old lady never liked this daughter-in-law. Has she gone mad? I covered my face with a handkerchief, my voice trembling. I told you yesterday that the coffin should be buried deeper, but you insisted on a hasty burial. What about his body? Could it have been eaten by wild dogs? You're talking nonsense. My mother-in-law struggled to get up, but I held her tightly by the waist. I leaned close to her ear, in a voice only she could hear. I whispered, "Do you know why there were scratching sounds from the coffin yesterday? It was your son-in-law begging for help. But what did you do? It's your fault. You killed him." The old woman, overcome with anger, vomited a mouthful of blood. She shouted at Fu Wang. Quick! Tie her up. I want her dead. I gave Fu Wang a nod. He immediately led several servants toward me, pretending to attack. I grabbed Yin Lian's hand and turned to dive into the crowd. Mother! Don't kill me! I ran and cried out. Yin Lian followed closely behind, shouting at the top of her lungs. The old lady of the Marquis of Wanning's mansion has gone mad and wants to kill someone. My mother-in-law screamed frantically behind us. Catch them! Cover her mouth! But there were too many people watching. In addition, Fu Wang and the others intentionally made way for us. Yin Lian and I quickly disappeared into the crowd. Before half a day had passed, the news that the old lady of the Marquis of Wanning's mansion wanted to kill her daughter-in-law spread throughout the capital. In tea houses and wine shops, everyone was discussing it. Have you heard? The old lady of the Marquis of Wanning's mansion has gone mad and wants to kill her daughter-in-law. That's right. They say it's because her son died, and she's taking it out on her daughter-in-law. TSK. Who would dare marry into such a family? Everyone in the capital knows that the Marquis of Wanning only married into the Shin family for their dowry. They're afraid their daughter-in-law will remarry, so they're killing her to get the money. Public opinion was completely on my side. Even the street storytellers have come up with new jokes. I had someone deliver a divorce petition to the Marquis's mansion, but the servant was beaten out before he even entered the gate. The mother-in-law has completely severed ties with me. She doesn't even care about maintaining the last shred of dignity. Yin Lian said anxiously. Miss, the old lady won't let you off. I sneered. Does she think this will trap me? I filed a lawsuit with the prefect's office. The entire city's citizens were my witnesses. But to my surprise, the prefect didn't even open a case. He had me thrown into prison. The cell was cold and damp. I curled up on the straw mat, listening to the guards' mocking laughter. The daughter of a merchant dares to sue the Marquis's mansion? She really doesn't know her place. 3 days later, Yin Lian delivered the deeds to 3 shops to the prefect. I was finally able to escape. Yin Lian helped me onto the carriage and whispered, Miss, suing the authorities won't work. What should we do now? We'll have to think of another way. I closed my eyes. My father's words before he died echoed in my mind. In this world, once a woman is married, escaping is as difficult as climbing to the heavens. In recent days, the streets and alleys of the capital were abuzz with gossip about the Wanning Marquis mansion. Have you heard? That Shin family girl poisoned her own husband to be with her lover. That's right. They say the Marquis of Wanning died with blood pouring from all 7 orifices. It was so gruesome. TSK. TSK. Women's hearts are the most poisonous. The Shin family's shop was piled high with rotten vegetables and stinking eggs. The shop assistants didn't even dare to open the door. Inlian was so angry that she rushed out to argue with the crowd. But they threw dirty water all over her. You're scared, aren't you? If your master hadn't done something shameful, why would you be so eager to defend him? Why not mention others? You're only talking about your master. It must be his fault. Now that the Marquis of Wanning is dead, she's demanding a divorce. Could it be she's pregnant with her lover's child? You know what? With her looks, I'd even consider sleeping with her. Aren't you afraid of being poisoned? Dying at the hands of a beauty would be a quick death. Ha 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 ha. Yin Lian returned with reddened eyes. Madam, they've gone too far. They even destroyed the charity hall where you were distributing porridge. I put down the ledger and sneered. She's trying to use public opinion to force me out. Unfortunately, she forgot one thing. What? I'm richer than her. The best way to dispel a rumor isn't to prove yourself. It's to create an even bigger one. 3 days later, the wind in the capital suddenly changed. Did you hear? The old lady of the Marquis of Wanning's mansion is the real poisonous woman. That's right. I heard that she killed her own son so she could get all of her daughter-in-law's dowry. I also heard she keeps several male concubines and parties all night long. At the tea house, the storyteller vividly recounted. That old lady only picks young, handsome male concubines, each more charming than the last. They say the servants attending her are all young men, and she calls for several of them at night. Not a single one is seen leaving all night long. But she's so old. If she takes a liking to you, the wealth of the Marquis mansion would be. The storyteller had ulterior motives. The listeners also had ulterior motives. The entrance to the Marquis mansion suddenly became bustling. A group of well-dressed young men lingered around all day. Some held scrolls of poetry, while others bared their upper bodies. They all stared longingly at the mansion gate. Lady, please take a look at the poem I wrote. Lady, I'm very strong. Please take me in. I sat in a private room at the tea house, listening to the buzzing discussions below. A cold smile curled at the corners of my mouth. Yin Lian whispered, Miss, what should we do next? I sipped my tea and replied indifferently. Wait. Wait for what? Wait for her to come find me. Meanwhile, I wasn't idle either. I began to regulate my body. Fortunately, I had been suffering from digestive issues during that time. Most of the tonic herbs I had consumed were vomited out. However, I feared Xiao Shujie would worry about my health, so I never mentioned it. Little did I know that it would inadvertently save my life. Miss, this is a renowned physician from Jiangnan, said to specialize in treating poison. Yin Lian led in a young woman. She took my pulse and shook her head. My heart sank. So it's true, I'll never be able to have children? She withdrew her hand and said indifferently. What I mean is, there is nothing wrong with you. What? I was stunned. But I've been married for 3 years and haven't. She looked at me with a faint smile. Most women who are infertile have issues with their husbands. They just won't admit it. A bold idea flashed through my mind. The Shin family's vast estate needed an heir. I also wanted the title of Marquis of Wanning. If I could have a child, why not have one? That night, I asked Yin Lian to help me find a young man from a poor family in the city. He must be handsome, well-built, and of good character. Most importantly, he must be able to pay in full and leave no loose ends. A few days later, Yin Lian brought news. There's a young man who just arrived at the matchmaker's office. His name is Lu Sheng. He comes from a scholarly family in Jiangnan but fell on hard times and ended up here. I put down the ledger and looked up, asking, what about his character? He has a fiery temper and refuses to entertain clients. He is still pure. Yin Lian paused. He has a scar on his right cheek, supposedly self-inflicted. I was immediately intrigued. Bring him to see me. That evening, Lu Sheng was quietly brought into my room. He wore a plain white robe. His figure tall and slender. His eyebrows and eyes like a painting. The scar on his right cheek added a touch of sharpness. Miss Shin. Good evening. He bowed slightly. His voice clear and crisp like spring water. I studied him, inwardly impressed. Such composure was indeed unlike that of an ordinary young man. I asked, do you know why you were brought here? He raised his eyes to meet mine, a hint of mockery flashing in his gaze. Miss Shin wants a child, doesn't she? I was taken aback, then smiled. What do you want? Help me escape from the matchmaker's hall. Deal. That night, the candlelight flickered, and the silk curtains swayed gently. Miss Shin, do you regret it? Regret what? Regret choosing this path. I remained silent for a moment before speaking softly. In this world, if a woman isn't ruthless, she'll only be at the mercy of others. He sighed softly and said nothing more. A month later, I discovered I was pregnant. Lu Sheng had also gained his freedom. But on the night he left, the husband's hall mysteriously caught fire and was reduced to ruins. What a pity. Such a good place. A month's time. Enough to turn the situation upside down. My mother-in-law was determined to make me pay with my life. But the Marquis of Wunning's mansion was already struggling to make ends meet. The assassins she hired with her life savings were turned against her with double the payment before they even entered my courtyard. Yin Lian handed me a letter. Madam, this is from the third assassin. He said the old lady can no longer afford the final payment. I hear she can't even pay the servants' wages anymore. I chuckled. It seems her savings are almost depleted. The Marquis of Wunning's mansion was no longer what it once was. Apart from the indentured servants and the spies I had planted, the other servants had all left. Just as my mother-in-law was at her wit's end, Xiao Shujie's concubine finally came knocking on our door. From that day onward, the Marquis's mansion was in complete chaos. I want bird's nest soup. It must be blood bird's nest. This hairpin is too tacky. Replace it with the one adorned with gems. You servants! Do you want to starve me and the young master to death? She squandered money recklessly every day. And at the slightest inconvenience, she threatened to kill herself. If you dare to mistreat me, I'll jump into the well with the child in my womb. The mother-in-law was driven to the brink of collapse. At that moment, she remembered my kindness. The grudge of killing her son could wait. What mattered was that I didn't return to the mansion. Xiao Shujie's only bloodline was about to starve to death. At the gates of the Shin mansion, an 8-person palanquin landed smoothly. The mother-in-law was dressed in fine robes, her wrinkled face smiling like a chrysanthemum. It was as if nothing had ever happened before. Ying Ying, your mother has come to take you home. The crowd of onlookers grew larger and larger. Whispers rose and fell. I stood on the steps, glaring at her. Go home? I'm afraid of dying. The old woman's expression froze for a moment before she forced a brighter smile. You're still holding a grudge against your mother? With so many people watching? Don't be so stubborn. Shujie is gone, and now it's just the two of us left to rely on each other. She reached out to pull me, but I sidestepped her. Just then, the curtain of the carriage was lifted, and a woman dressed in a pink silk skirt stepped down slowly. holding her stomach. Her eyes were filled with love, and her voice was soft. Greetings, sister. I interrupted her without hesitation. Hey, don't call me that. The Shin family only has one daughter. Don't try to get involved. Her eyes immediately filled with tears, and she looked at my mother-in-law with a look of grievance. Her mother-in-law cleared her throat awkwardly, pulling my hand to explain. Ying, this is Lin Yuyan. She is Shujie's. She paused, unsure how to continue, and finally forced herself to say, she is carrying Shujie's child. I decided to make her a concubine. Now you will have someone to look out for you in the mansion. I shook off her hand and shouted, so you're the mistress? How shameless! The onlookers were in an uproar. Whispers grew louder. Lin Yuyan had never endured such humiliation. She stood there, her belly protruding, and screamed, sister, the child in my womb is the only heir of the Marquis. He will inherit the Marquis's estate. So what? I sneered. So you should go back to the Marquis's mansion and take care of me. She spoke with righteous indignation. Her words amused me. You should change your name to Lin Hoyan, thick-faced. My mother-in-law hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Ying, this child will be registered under your name. She is your support. Support? I sneered. I won't raise a thankless wretch. My mother-in-law's expression darkened, her tone threatening. As the mistress of the house, this is your duty. Even if you were to take this to the authorities, you wouldn't be in the right. Besides, your Shin family's business is so prosperous, it's all thanks to the influence of the Marquis's mansion. She grew more and more smug as she spoke. Shin Ying, don't be ungrateful. Come back to the mansion with me. I gently stroked my belly, smiling sweetly. Mother, it's not that I don't want to acknowledge this child, but I'm also pregnant. What? My mother-in-law and Lin Yuyan screamed in unison. In the end, I returned to the Wanning Marquis mansion. Not for any other reason. Only because my child needed a proper lineage. As I stepped through the mansion gates, I barely recognized this once magnificent Marquis mansion. The flowers and plants in the garden were withered and decaying, emitting a foul odor. There were only a few servants sweeping the grounds. Even the lanterns under the corridors were covered in dust. Yin Lian whispered, Miss, how did the Marquis's mansion fall into such disrepair? They're so poor they can't even afford to keep their servants. So they naturally don't care about appearances. I had just sat down. My mother-in-law called a doctor to take my pulse. After taking my pulse, the doctor stroked his gray beard. Congratulations, old lady. The mistress is with child. Already over 2 months along. The old woman's expression was extremely complicated. Can you tell if it's a boy or a girl? The doctor shook his head. It's still too early to tell. However, the doctor glanced at Lin Yuyan's belly and hesitated. The old woman immediately slipped a small piece of silver into his hand. The doctor finally spoke slowly. The lady is carrying a girl. You're lying. Lin Yuyan screamed. My belly is so pointed, and I crave sour foods. How could it not be a son? The doctor grew angry, picked up his medicine box, and turned to leave. If you don't believe me, just find someone else. The old woman hurriedly stopped the doctor and whispered, I heard you have a medicine that can change the baby's gender. The doctor remained silent. The old woman pulled out a piece of silver. The doctor didn't even glance at it. The old woman gritted her teeth and pulled out a gold hairpin from her head and pushed it toward him. The doctor remained unmoved. Name your price. The old woman gritted her teeth. The doctor held up one finger. 100 taels? 1,000 taels. The old woman's face turned pale instantly. She looked at my belly, then at Lin Yuyan's belly. Hesitating. Lin Yuyan panicked. She pulled the old woman's sleeve and whispered, "Old lady, don't forget. She's the one who killed. Xiaolang loves me so much. This child is his heart's desire. As the main wife, Shen should naturally bear children for the Marquis family. She should pay this money." She whispered so quietly that even I could hear her. The mother-in-law thought about it and realized that she was right. She turned her head and pulled my hand, speaking in a warm tone. "Our Marquis family is small. This child will also be your child and will be registered under your name." I smiled without responding. She thought I had softened my stance and patted my hand. "Ying, your mother knows you're a good child. Go get the money." I pulled my hand back and said indifferently, "No." "Why?" "I am the legitimate wife married in a proper ceremony. She is an illegitimate concubine who cannot see the light of day. Concubines should not bear children before the legitimate wife. In proper families, they would have been given a bowl of red flowers long ago." Lin Yuyan couldn't contain herself anymore and rushed toward me. I held on to Yin Lian and dodged to the side. "Oh, Yin Lian, help me back to my room to rest. My stomach doesn't feel well." Lin Yuyan couldn't stop herself and had to forcefully twist her body. She collided directly with her mother-in-law. "Ah!" Two shrill screams echoed. Yin Lian helped me leave quickly. Back in the room, Yin Lian closed the door and whispered, "Madam, the money has been delivered to Dr. Chen's house." Lin Yuyan's commotion had caused her to stir the fetus again. She had to lie in bed to protect the pregnancy. The doctor prescribed several more expensive tonic formulas. The already impoverished mother-in-law was now in even greater distress. The maid reported nervously, "Lady, this medicine costs 100 taels per dose." The mother-in-law's face turned ashen. She gritted her teeth and rummaged through the bottom of her jewelry box, pulling out a few pieces of silver. "Get one prescription first." But this was far from enough. The mother-in-law emptied her last savings. She even pawned the jewelry she had brought as her dowry, but still couldn't raise the 1,000 taels needed for the medicine. Fu Wang whispered a reminder. "The servants in the mansion. We could sell some of them for silver." The old woman closed her eyes and waved her hand. "Sell them." Lin Yuyan was almost obsessed with the medicine. After each dose, she would rinse the bowl with clear water and drink every last drop. And I happily began my pregnancy journey. Yin Lian brought me some bird's nest soup. "Miss, the old lady is so thin she's almost unrecognizable. She can barely walk." I rinsed my mouth with the bird's nest soup. "Oh, that's good. You can't buy old age with money." Most of the servants in the mansion had been sold. Lin Yuyan was also pregnant. Therefore, all the hard and tedious work fell on the old woman's shoulders. She washed clothes, swept the floor, and cooked meals every day. Where was the pampered life she once had? She visibly aged several years. Yin Lian stifled a laugh. "Lin Ai is secretly eating your leftovers." "Madam, what should we do next?" I stroked my increasingly rounded belly. "Wait. Wait for what?" "Wait for their downfall." Actually, the mother-in-law had come to find me before. She wanted to act like a proper mother-in-law. But I always refused to see her, claiming that my pregnancy was unstable and I needed to rest. She couldn't do anything about the strong guards stationed at my door. She could only stomp her feet in frustration. But she was powerless. After all, before Lin Yuyan-san was born, my belly was still precious. Days passed one after another. Lin Yuyan's belly grew larger and larger. Calculating the days, it was time for her to give birth. It was time to give her a grand gift. That night, the Wuning Marquis mansion was suddenly raided by bandits. The bandits stole the Wuning Marquis mansion's plaque and set fire to the ancestral hall. The old matriarch was so enraged she trembled all over, grabbing her walking stick and rushing outside. "They've gone mad. Everyone come with me to catch the thieves." But all the young and strong servants in the mansion had already been sold off. Only a few old, weak, and infirm remained. They followed the old matriarch nervously. They were lucky. The thieves had left clear footprints along the way. Following the footprints, they soon arrived outside Lin Yuyan's room. Just then, a piercing scream came from inside Lin Yuyan's room. Ah! The old woman hurriedly pushed open Lin Yuyan's door. The scene inside nearly caused her to faint. A man was lying there, half naked. A piece of Lin Yuyan's undergarment was still hanging from his waist. Below him, Lin Yuyan lay naked, her face as pale as paper, with blood seeping from between her legs. "Someone! Catch this madman!" the old woman screamed hoarsely. But the elderly maids looked at each other, none daring to step forward. They had been starving for days, their limbs weak from hunger. How could they possibly have the strength to catch a thief? "You worthless fools!" The old woman trembled with anger. She grabbed her walking stick and swung it at the man. The man wasn't someone to be trifled with. After taking a few blows, he grew enraged. Without a second thought, he grabbed a knife from the table and lunged at the old woman. There was a thud. The knife had pierced the old woman's chest. She stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what she saw. The walking stick clattered to the ground. The man took the opportunity to rush out, but he was caught by the officials who had arrived just in time. I stepped out from behind the officials and rushed to the old woman's side. Tears fell just in time. "Mother! Mother! What happened to you?" At that moment, I finally noticed the situation inside the house and covered my mouth in shock, shouting, "Ah! So the thief in the mansion was actually Lin Yuyan. You had an affair with your lover. And after your mother caught you, you dared to kill her to cover it up." Those words completely sealed the fate of the situation before me. Lin Yuyan tried to defend herself, but she was in too much pain to speak. Curled up on the bed, moaning in agony. I wasn't accusing her falsely. The man was Lin Yuyan's cousin and the biological father of the child in her womb. I had merely been kind-hearted enough to bring the man into the mansion. I even lit some aromatic incense in the room to set the mood. After all, though I had lost my husband, I did not wish for lovers to be separated. But I never imagined they would go so far. The man was arrested and thrown into prison. Lin Yuyan was forced to give birth prematurely. She gave birth to a male infant, but he was stillborn. She couldn't bear the blow. She went mad on the spot. She began telling everyone she was the mistress of the house. Later, she disappeared. Some said she had thrown herself into a well with the dead baby. As for the mother-in-law, though the knife wound was not fatal, it had severed the root of her being. She now lies in bed, half dead, unable to even turn over without assistance. Who would want to tend to her now? When I entered her room, the stench of urine hit me like a wave, nearly blinding me. Spider webs hung from the window frames. Rotten food was scattered across the bed. Festering bed sores spread from her neck down to her waist. When she saw me, her sunken eye sockets erupted with venomous hatred. Poison. Poisonous woman. I leaned down, my smile gentle. "Mother, I have good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first?" Her cloudy eyes bulged almost out of their sockets, and she made a guttural sound in her throat. "The bad news is that Lin Yuyan's child is dead. It was a boy." Her fingers dug into the bed frame, and she forced the words out between her teeth. "You. It's you," I continued, my tone casual. "The good news is, that child isn't Xiao Shujie's." As soon as the words left my mouth, the old woman's gaze fell on my swollen belly. I touched my rounded belly, my lips curving upward. Of course, the child in my womb isn't Xiao Shujie's either. Xiao Shujie. He can't have children. Her chest rose and fell violently. Her face turned from pale to purple, and her lips twitched uncontrollably. I continued to provoke her. Xiao Shujie is destined to have no heirs. The Marquis's mansion will be mine. Ah! A shrill scream erupted from her throat. Immediately, a mouthful of blood gushed out. Her entire body stiffened on the bed. Lifeless. Use Xiao Shujie's coffin. I took the handkerchief handed to me by Yin Lian and wiped my fingers slowly. At least they've reunited as mother and son. The candles in the room flickered. It illuminated the old woman's distorted face. Her eyes were wide open. She had died with her eyes open. 3 months later, I gave birth to a boy. He had handsome features and a loud cry. Miss. The young master is so handsome. Yin Lian held the child, smiling broadly. He will surely grow up to be a great man. I stroked the child's cheek, filled with joy. This child not only inherited my bloodline, he will also inherit the entire Marquis of Wanning Mansion. As for the child's biological father, everyone who knew the truth is dead. Who knows? Without a husband or a mother-in-law, with money, status, and a son, I dare not imagine how happy the rest of my life will be. End of story.